Michael with United Veterans Worldwide. I'm eager today to meet with my friend Ed and to hear his journey as a New York firefighter, and also to talk through a little bit about his advocacy at the end, where he's working with Guardian Revival and in a podcast called Guided Meditations, and encouraging veterans and first responders and supporters in their mental health journey, and also just to get more active and get out of themselves, right? So Ed, will you tell us a little bit about yourself other than what I've just mentioned, and let's start the discussion.
Yeah, just a little background to help you understand part of the journey and what led me to even be here today. I was born in a working class, heavy drinking, blue collar neighborhood in Brooklyn, New York, and it was very common where I came from for people to aspire to civil service, to be encouraged to explore what it meant to become a police officer or a firefighter or even sanitation. And the idea of helping someone for a living was kind of ingrained in us from the time I was a Boy Scout, and even going to a Jesuit school that was part of the Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps, Xavier High School in New York City, even Xavier as an education through the Jesuits, becoming a man for others. A lot of these ideals were instilled in me from a young age of what it meant to serve your fellow brothers and sisters in this world, whether that meant through, serving your country, serving your community, or just being someone who was at least community-minded. And I think it's part of the reason the big part of the reason that informed me becoming a firefighter, besides the fact that I'm the youngest of 5 and I have 3 older brothers, all of which served on the fire department. One which still does as a fire marshal, one just retired after 30 years. My other brother served 27 years as a paramedic. So this is kind of the family business in a lot of ways. And throughout that journey, it just became... I took the test in the 90s, but with the fire department in New York City, you could take the test and it's an open competitive exam where tens of thousands of people apply for these jobs.
Yeah.
And so you have to wait sometimes a long time. So I didn't get hired. And actually my brother Gary got hired. His last day of the academy was September 10th, 2001. His first day on the job was September 11th.
No way.
And there were several other guys who it was their first day on the job, and some of them died that day. So they died on their first day as a firefighter.
No way.
So, yeah, and then at that point, I had lost a bunch of friends. Some of them were firefighters. Some of them were just friends that I had gone to high school or college with, that were killed in private companies in the World Trade Center. And so September 11th really informed, I felt like I was ready to take up arms and join the service and try to find the bad guys. I was just full of a lot of anger and confusion and rage, and just felt very protective over my city, my country, and the people I loved. And having lost friends, it just kind of re-inspired me. So then when I got hired in 2003, you began to see a lot of some of the guys that were left from 9/11, which there are a lot of guys still dealing with a lot of the demons that they were carrying from that experience. Not only that, but carrying a lot of demons from a lot of experiences.
Yeah.
And as I continued to work, and I would go to calls, whether it would be a pediatric medical incident, a car accident which was fatal, or a house fire where there were multiple victims, and starting to see some of the more graphic and visceral, the carnage, what happens, death and destruction, violence, crime, the streets of Brooklyn, it became a school to highlight some of the things that happen. And when people are facing their worst nightmare and they're calling 911, and you're showing up as part of your job to help people that are facing their worst nightmare, they taught us how to show up, the fire department. The training was excellent. Every time someone got hurt or killed, they use that experience to train us better so they could prevent us from experiencing the same fate. And the training with the FDNY is excellent. And although they trained us to put out fires and cut people out of cars and break through walls to rescue people, they never taught us how to deal with the stress, with the processing of the trauma or the emotions that come from this type of service. And so you can see how that stress would spill out over into the rest of the lives of the first responders I worked with. You'd see like how people were managing, or should I say not managing, their challenges so well, some of the stresses in their life. And like many other people, when I would feel overwhelmed with stress, it kind of became this cumulative thing over the course of time. And you don't really, at first I really didn't know what to do with it. So I kind of repressed it and suppressed it a lot. Mm-hmm. Also poured a lot of booze on it. And I guess that worked until it didn't. And so you just kind of go and along with the program and see a lot of what the other brothers are doing. They're using alcohol and food and other sort of lifestyle behaviors to kind of numb and distract themselves from facing some of the stress or from dealing with some of the stress. And you would see throughout the course of your career that over the course of time, guys, it would build up, the stress would build up, and guys would suffer as a result of carrying around some of these stress wounds. So for me, it became really clear that we were highly trained and highly effective at doing our jobs and taking on other people's stress, an extraordinary amount of stress. But we weren't trained on how to manage that stress in a healthy way. And so after I had gotten injured at a fire, I was placed on light duty, a modified position. And that light duty position was at the counseling service unit. And I began to see that there were firefighters that were coming in for help. Some of them were mandated there. So as an example, if like you take a prescription drug you're not supposed to, or you use an illicit compound and you get tested, or you get pulled over and you get a driving while intoxicated, you'd be mandated for counseling services. But it was much more of a punitive thing, Michael. It was much more of a punishment. And so, here you have a firefighter who's highly trained, working for years, building up stress, and then he doesn't have the coping mechanisms or the skills to deal with this stress. And so he starts self-medicating, whether it's through drugs, alcohol, food. And then he's having such a tough time with his self-medication that it's becoming problematic. It's affecting his responsibility as a husband, as a father, as a human being, as a firefighter. And what we do as a society in a lot of ways is we say, oh yeah, you're having so much trouble dealing with that stress that you're drinking so much and using illegal drugs, jeopardizing your job. You know what we're going to do? We're going to punish you.
Yep.
Maybe even fire you.
Yep.
So now we're just exacerbating this condition. And so a human being that's crying out for help and doesn't know how to manage their stress is doing something illicit and they're getting punished for it. I feel like as a society, we can recognize when someone is suffering and we can do better to help them manage their stress instead of punishing them for a natural, normal human reaction to stress.
Ed, you've mentioned this piece that is such a trigger for me mentally. I go back to my platoon time. I was with guys who had already been through combat in Iraq and Afghanistan. I was the new guy. I'd never been in combat. And when my guys would go out drinking and come back drunk, man, did I give it to them, punish them, kick one of them out of the army, and never once did I consider that they were coping with post-traumatic stress from their previous deployment before I arrived. And you saying this just triggered this thought, like maybe I didn't handle it the right way. I had no experience to show me otherwise. Like when you talk about society maybe recognizing trauma, society doesn't look at a veteran who's dressed nice in their uniform or a firefighter dressed up with their hat on and everything and say, trauma victim.
No, the opposite. What we do is we pedestalize these quote-unquote heroes. And we look at them and we say, you're a strong, brave man. You run into burning buildings. You're tough. You can handle it. You have resilience. You're strong. We dehumanize them. We dehumanize those because we need heroes and protectors and people to do things that we want someone to save us in a lot of ways. And so we overlook their human frailty. We overlook their weaknesses. We overlook their humanness. And when we don't allow those first responders, those veterans, those guardians to be full spectrum human beings, to have a full emotional world, and we diminish them in some ways.
Powerful.
They really need, so even like you saw this guy who you expected more from, but you didn't see his pain, because we're masters. So I'll speak for myself. I was a master of covering it up.
Yeah.
I wear masks. I present myself as tough. I can handle this. I got this. When in reality, I've learned as the years have gone on that one of the bravest and toughest and strongest things a man can do is ask for help. And it's so hard for us to ask for help. And that's part of changing the stigma of our society. And even Gabor Mate is this doctor who works a lot with addiction and a lot with childhood trauma, but trauma is trauma. And we all have it from being born into this world. Yep. And this human body is to be traumatized.
100%.
And then it gets exacerbated by our service. But Dr. Gabor Mate talks not about why you're drinking so much. He talks about asking the question of, what is the pain that you're so afraid to face? What is the sadness that you're so afraid to express? What is the fear that you're so uncomfortable admitting to, that you would rather pour poison into your body on a regular basis to numb and distract yourself from feeling that truth of what you're experiencing? And the reality is, again, I'll speak for myself here, growing up the youngest of 5 in a blue-collar family, my dad was one of 9 living in growing up in the old tenements of Brooklyn, New York, very poor. He didn't have the guidance or the tools to understand himself. Yeah. And so me growing up the youngest of 5, if I would cry or express sadness or fear, I would be threatened with violence. I would be told, keep it down or I'll give you something to cry about, or just be given a swift smack. And, I look back on that now as just my dad's attempt to make his sons tough in a tough world that requires resilience and strength. But in a lot of ways, what I learned was it is not safe to express sadness. It is not safe to express fear. And if you do, you will be punished, and you will be taught that it makes you weak. It emasculates you. It makes you less than. It makes you untrustworthy. And so as men, if we want to be trusted and seen as tough and competent and capable, we cannot show weakness. And if we do, we'll be castigated as, not to use the pejoratives, but all the names that kids would be called.
That's right.
And so growing up now, I recognize so many men that I know simply are carrying around deep-seated fear, grief, and sadness that no one ever taught them what they're feeling, how to identify it, where it is in their body, how to feel it, how to express it, how to release it, how to let it go. And so after so many years of suppressing and depressing and repressing all of these emotions, it's no wonder why we're carrying around that obesity and unhealthy eating habits and certain addictions in where it's manifesting itself in unhealthy ways, where we're lashing out at our wives and kids, or just angry at everything, really irritable, stuck in this state of hypervigilance and reactivity.
Yep.
Because we simply cannot fully process the full spectrum of emotions and honor ourselves. So there's a lot of work to be done to turn this boat around.
Yeah, you're on point, Ed, and thank you for walking me through that process, because I don't know if anybody's ever described it so eloquently, the journey that a man sometimes takes in life from childhood on, and what we've been taught. And maybe I'll just I'll give you a scenario that I've recently encountered. I had one of my best buddies from the Army come on the channel and share his journey, and mind you, I didn't know some of the details of this journey. I just knew that he was struggling in the moment. And as he walks me through his journey, and he talks about an attempted suicide that his wife found him and cut him down so that he wasn't hanging and saved his life. I can hardly tell it without getting emotional, but as he's getting emotional on the channel, is it appropriate for me to be stone-faced? Or is it appropriate for me to share with him that same emotion like I'm doing right now? I felt it in my whole body, like, man, I just want to give this guy a hug through the camera because I know where he's been and I know where he can go, and I'm so glad that he's still with us today. And so much of what I talk about on this channel, and mind you, I'm a warrior at heart. If I see someone being attacked on the street, or if I hear gunfire in a school, I'm running towards that still today. But at the same moment, I can grieve with somebody who's grieving. I can get emotional, and it doesn't remove any bit of who I am as a warrior, right? And you've learned this journey as well, and this is what you talk about often. And I want to take you back for a second. You briefly mentioned an injury. One of the things that my audience follows, and I'm going to just say this in an instance, like this weekend my channel has really blown up and added another 4,000 subscribers over the weekend, which I'm so grateful for you guys tuning in from around the world. We're going to hit probably 50,000 subscribers today, which is a mile marker that I would never thought we'd hit. But people are tuning in because they understand the need for this. When you talk about an injury, and we talk about what eventually becomes chronic pain in some ways, can you talk to me about this injury that you sustained and what was going on that got to that point?
Yeah, the injury that I suffered, I had multiple injuries from firefighting over the years. This one in particular was the damage to the C6, C7 area of the cervical spine. That's why what the C stands for. So the C6 and the C7 then affected not only the use of my left arm, but also my entire left side. I would feel, just the compromised disability of strength and some numbness and paralysis when I would have certain. So at that point, I gave myself the time, and there was a suggestion of a surgical intervention where they would do a bone graft with instrumentation, so pretty much putting hardware and metal to use up that area. But the idea of, at that point, climbing up a ladder in full bunker gear with a saw to cut a roof just became too hazardous to consider, especially, at that point, my children were young. And even the stress of who am I and what is my worth if I can't do my job effectively really makes you question. You go one day from jumping on the rig and showing up to help people to being told, but there's a good possibility you'll never do that again. And how do you shift gears from being the guy that feels purposeful and feels like they have a deep sense of meaning to serve their community to someone that is essentially put offline and told, put out to pasture? And I do believe I couldn't translate that to the military experience, but I can tell you that I've worked. So I work now at Guardian Revival.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you a bit about Guardian Revival, and that will kind of help you to understand. But what I do is I work as a peer leader. I also host a podcast with a Navy SEAL named Monty Heath, and we talk about a lot of the challenges that Guardians face. And when I say Guardians, I'm referring to military, veterans, and first responders of all walks across the nation. And when I do peer counseling or this one-on-one peer relationship, I find some of the people that I work with are people who have suffered just that. They felt purposeful, they felt full of vitality and health and strength and purpose and meaning, and then an IED or an accident or a training mishap or something affected their ability to continue to do their job. And when our sense of purpose, how we define ourselves and how we identify with who we are and how we relate to the world is taken away from us, it's devastating to a lot of people. It sometimes happens in a subtle way, just from retirement. A guy goes from being a chief or a captain, a lieutenant, or an experienced firefighter to just an average Joe. And shifting gears can be really problematic, and filling that with a sense of purpose and meaning, that's where Guardian Revival comes in. It's through creating community and connection to increase the health and wellness of first responders. And I believe that if you call 911 and the first responder shows up to you, or someone is out serving their country, how do we want to take care of them in their time of need? How do we call 911 and they show up for us? How do we show up for them? And I think understanding that they need help, guidance, and support and community during these transitions is a really good way to thank them for their service.
Yeah, well said. Well said. You know, it's hard for me to conceptualize what a firefighter's risks are, having never done that work before. So when you hurt your spine, did you fall from something? Were you in a fire? Were you carrying something?
Yeah, never even made it into the fire. This was a fire escape ladder, became disconnected from, I don't know if you know New York City, but we have fire escapes where these metal wrought iron, where you actually have to push a ladder up, it unhooks, and then it drops down. Yeah. That ladder, I mean, they're in disrepair in a lot of places. This was in the rear of the building, and essentially that ladder became unhinged from the fire escape itself, and I thankfully fell into bushes in a neighboring yard that was a little higher in elevation. Had I not, I would have fallen much further directly onto concrete with my full gear on, and I hate to think of what it could have been, but I'm very lucky to have sustained an injury that left me with at least the ability to live a healthy life in a lot of ways. Not being able to be a firefighter, but at the same time, there are so many guys that suffer injuries that deal with chronic pain, disability, or unfortunately never see the light of day again after going to a fire. So it happens, unfortunately, as part of our service that guys go into fires and they just don't come out alive. And then the mental and emotional ramifications of dealing with seeing that happen to the people that you work with is also another untold kind of trauma that these guys carry, survivor's guilt. So the injuries around firefighting is something that affects the people that are injured, and it also affects their families and their colleagues and the department as a whole. And I think how we respond to creating support around those that, again, sacrifice their health and their well-being in service, it's important for us to have conversations around this. Yeah, 100%. There was a video that went viral on social media several years ago, and it was 3 firefighters on a rooftop of a warehouse type structure that was burning, and they were testing the roof, and the guy that was closer to the inner side, away from the ridge where there was a little more stability, fell through, and the other 2 firefighters, you could just see their utter horror and nothing they could do except for scramble off that part of the roof before the whole thing collapsed. And when it went viral, when I saw that the first time, I was horrified. One, because it was going so viral, everybody was trying to watch this video, and I hope that everybody had the same reaction I did. And maybe in that sense it's good to show that the risk firefighters take, but to watch someone's death was horrific to me, and it really brought to mind the need to not just talk to veterans, but to talk to first responders, a world that I didn't really understand, but have come since starting this channel 4 months ago. I've interviewed several, and my goodness, my respect for the work that first responders do today is so immense. I had no idea the trauma that you guys would face daily, suppress, go back home at night and try to function normally, and go back and do the same attack each day. It's otherworldly to me. And so when you say, like, if you were to ever have somebody compare the life of a veteran who's done combat tours and that of a first responder, first responders in my mind have it harder. We don't have to go home at night after we get in a firefight.
we go back to the barracks wherever we're living and we recoup for the next day, but we don't have to face family. I don't have to face my kids' homework. So that to me opens my eyes so widely, and my respect for you guys is huge, brother.
I appreciate that, and it's actually good that we maybe spend a moment there to try to understand what that means. We talked a little bit before about downshifting.
Yeah.
So what does it mean when someone is going into work as a police officer or a firefighter, and they go from a complete resting state to all of a sudden, boop, and the bell goes off, and what happens is we have this huge dump of adrenaline and cortisol and stress hormones into our body, and we respond, sometimes from a deeply resting state to, you're going from 0 to 100. You're going from green into red almost instantaneously. For a cop, it may be the call of someone with a weapon, someone being injured. Another cop, 1013, police officer needing assistance, or a firefighter getting the call. Yeah, we have a report of a fire with multiple people trapped and window bars. I mean, the amount of intensity that's going into, my whole body just lit up thinking about that feeling. Because sometimes the bell goes off and you jump up and you hop on and you're like, okay, this could be something. But other times you're getting a report, multiple calls, that this is a working fire, and the boss starts banging on the window saying, we're going to work. We got a job. You're going to work. I mean, you're not going up in laxity. You're buttoning up. You are getting ready to go into battle. And when you have enough of those occasions within a tour, a day tour, a night tour, a 24-hour shift, and you are having this 0 to 100, this green to red happen chronically, the damage that it does to the physical body, the heart, the nervous system, the dysregulation it causes from people being in a chronic state of fight or flight, being in a chronic state of response mode. Guess what? When they go home, they can't just downshift. They can't just go from 100 back down to 0 or from red into green. As much as they may think they have control over this, the science, the empirical data is clear that when you have an incident like that and you have that cortisol and adrenaline dumped into your system, it takes a full day for that to return to baseline. And so the default mode of a first responder, even your military veteran, even though they aren't going home to their family at night, they're still kind of creeped up here in this yellow into red range. And so when they come back, even though they might be in a peaceful, idyllic suburbia, still not sure if they're over where there could be a threat, there could be an IED, there could be a sniper. And so this hypervigilance applies across the board. Yes, it happens more chronically for the first responder returning home, but it does affect all guardians across the board.
You're right.
Full spectrum.
You're right.
So this state of what I think would be termed operator syndrome, stuck in response mode, this state of hypervigilance, or should we say fight or flight, or if we want to break it down even further on a biological level, simply call it into the sympathetic mode. And so that would be contrasted with parasympathetic mode, the rest and digest mode, which is an essential part of being healthy, regulating our nervous system, digesting food, allowing our body to repair itself and get the rest it needs. So when you get people that are caught in the sympathetic mode, in fight or flight, the physical, emotional, mental, spiritual effect that this has on a human being on a chronic level is devastating and damaging. And I just feel like we can practice greater awareness around this and provide more support for the people that serve us. Yeah,
and the mission that you have with Guardian Revival, as I'm learning more about this incredible organization that aligns so well to the same mission that I'm trying to pursue on a daily basis with veterans and first responders, is so wonderful. Every person that I connect with, and I do a discovery call like I did with you ahead of time where we talk through some of the things before we get into the interview. some of my discovery calls are rescue calls. Somebody will say, "Hey, Michael, I've got a buddy who's really struggling right now, and he's open to a call," and I'll give him a call. And I'm like, "Where are you right now?" He's like, "Well, I'm in the basement." "Are there windows?" "No, it's all dark. Lights are off. I'm just sitting in the dark." I'm like, "Yeah, I've been there. Let me tell you a story." And I walk him through my journey, and I talk through the dark parts, and I say, "I've been there, and here's what I've done, and here's what I'm doing now. Here's where I'm at. So there's hope. If I can do it, you can do it. So take the first step. Let's get outside today and let's walk for 15 minutes. Yeah, I'm too fat. I put on so much weight." Yeah, that's what happens when we don't allow our bodies to recover. We're not sleeping. We're not fight or flight's still on, right? We're broken. And I say broken meaning we can still fix some of these things really, really well and find a new way to, I say, a new version of ourselves in the future. And I walk it step by step. And some of these guys I've known for many, many years, and they're still just starting right now to take those first steps, because they don't necessarily believe at first when I tell them that it's possible to lose 45 pounds, to get your body back in shape, to open your windows at day and look outside and see the sun and feel hope, because hope was gone a long time ago for a lot of these guys. And my encouragement is to, and like you're doing, is when you finally feel that hope again, man, does that give you so much power.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with our veteran and first responder, I'll call it the Guardian community, it's really so important. So here's where I find is one of the challenging areas that gets a little sticky.
Yeah.
And so this might help those that are listening out there to understand what's going on a little bit more clearly. When you have someone that is suffering from chronic stress, that it becomes more who they are than that other version that they used to be, there is a shift that happens. Just like anything else, there's this cumulative effect that happens over time where they lose hope and they go into darkness, or they're not managing their stress in a healthy way.
Yep.
And this happens over the course of time.
Yep. And
so if you simply pathologize them or make them feel like they're broken, or tell them, what's your problem, or what's you okay, like implying there's something wrong with them, it can feel as if they're broken, they're weak, they're less than, or there's something wrong with them. Brother, sister, if you are hearing this and you're going through a dark time, there is nothing wrong with you. Nothing. Your body and brain and nervous system, they are reacting exactly the way that they're supposed to.
Yep.
We are designed, our nervous systems are designed to protect ourselves from danger, perceived or actual. And when you sign up to do a job where, the average person experiences 6 incidents of trauma in their lifetime. The average soldier, the average firefighter, or police officer may experience 6 incidents of trauma in one tour, one 24-hour shift.
Yeah, that's craziness.
1 week,
Yep.
1 month. And so if you are suffering and struggling and feeling stuck in this state like you're broken, there's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken.
Right.
Your body is reacting, feeling like it's in a constant state of stress. So what do we recognize? We recognize that by making that guardian feel broken, that we're telling them there's something wrong with them. When we remind them that there's nothing wrong with them, that they're reacting completely normally, we can also remind them that if they can understand how their brain, their body, and their nervous system works, we can give them actionable tools, real tools to help them out. And I'm going to give you one just right now. So if you're listening to this, you can understand it really clearly. If you feel like you're stuck, you've been stuck in a stressful state, or you're having problem managing these stress wounds from your service, understand this very simply. There's parts of the brain, the amygdala being like the fire alarm, the hippocampus being responsible for creativity and connection and feeling better. They are mutually exclusive. So if one is heightened, the other one is diminished. And when the other one is heightened, the other one is diminished. And we've gotten into such a state of fight or flight that our amygdala, our fire alarm, and our brain is constantly going off. Okay? That means the hippocampus is shrinking. So if we find ourselves stuck in this state of fight or flight, we can recognize that we can shift that. We can do the work. You don't need a doctor or medication. It may be really helpful to consider therapy. It might even be essential to consider medication. Pharmaceuticals can be helpful, but they're not always the answer, but they can be. So let's explore some options. But recognizing that by simply shifting your physical body from a state of fight or flight into a state of rest and digest, to switch yourself over from being hypervigilant in response mode into choosing to calm your body down, is something that you can do on your own. And one of the simple tricks is to simply breathe using the diaphragm. When we breathe into our belly through the nose, and we make our exhale longer than our inhale, we are mimicking what the body is like in a state of rest. So if you're listening to this and you're feeling anxious and on edge, and your body is dumping cortisol constantly from watching the news or being just stuck, recognize that you can just shift your physiology by changing your breathing, and then you feel you're more empowered. You literally have control of your body, your brain, and your nervous system. And when we start using this language and having conversations about actionable tools, instead of just sending the guy to the VA or sending him to the doctor and pumping him up with a bunch of drugs to numb his problem, we're going to the root of the problem, Michael. A lot of the times modern medicine just wants to address the symptom.
The Band-Aid.
What is the cause?
Yeah.
What is creating this? Let's get to the root cause, and let's regulate and relax our bodies and our nervous system through the power of the breath. And that's why I teach meditation mindfulness, where we can become aware of the thoughts, especially the rumination, that monkey mind that's constantly ruminating over and over, retelling us stories from the past, worried about the future, replaying arguments and conversations, and never gives us a break. We can use the power of breath also. We can become aware of our thoughts, aware of the mind, still the mind, calm the body, bring ourselves into a state where that amygdala starts to shrink now, and the hippocampus becomes larger. And we can literally, you talk about neuroscience and neuroplasticity, which is the brain's ability to change. And there is empirical data and scans that show if someone practices regular deep breath work and meditation, calming and relaxing their nervous system, they can literally shrink the amygdala, that alarm, and increase the centers of well-being and peace. And so what I try to teach the brothers and sisters is, yes, medication and professional clinical help is probably important in a lot of cases, but you can also take power and control and agency and sovereignty over your health and wellness.
Yeah.
So it's a powerful way to kind of shift that control. You're not powerless.
Yeah.
We got your back. And so Guardian Revival really provides a lot of different programs that help to build community, health, wellness, connection, to really allow these guardians to feel connected to community and give them the support that they need to heal.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's incredible. One thing I haven't spoken about much on the channel is the breath work, and yet I find myself every day doing something along those lines, where there's some meditation, some peaceful calm, where it's just me in a quiet place, just breathing and focusing. Yeah, that's excellent. I interviewed a firefighter from New York not too long ago. He has a podcast called Table 59. And he mentioned, he's like, hey, if you ever have anxiety, and I said, yeah, I get anxiety every day. I'm no longer taking meds for it because it didn't really help. He said, so what do you do? And I said, well, sometimes I go on a walk. Sometimes I'll go get an extra cardio workout. Maybe the workout is just walking. And he said, well, here's what I do. I go and I do a cold plunge. And I was like, okay. And what happens when you do that cold plunge? And he said, it resets my brain. And suddenly I come out of that cold plunge, my body's feeling all of this recover, all the heat rushes to the skin. And he's like, and my anxiety's gone. And I said, really? So I got onto Temu, bought a $30 tub, right? A plastic blow-up tub, filled it with well water from my property, and it's sitting right now out in the front yard about 34 degrees because it's so flipping cold outside. I have to break the chunks of ice on the top, and I got in the other day when I had a lot of anxiety, and let me tell you, that anxiety went out the window. And as the body starts to heat up again, man, did I have so much goodness going on in my brain where I was like, yes.
Yeah, that endorphin rush is actually a form of natural opiates.
Woo!
Our body has natural opiate receptors that are meant to help us handle pain in stressful situations. So by introducing intentional stress, we can actually retrain the body, especially if we introduce intentional stress. And when we introduce that stress, we choose to keep ourselves relaxed, not go into the... You don't want to do that shallow thoracic breathing. You want to breathe intentionally and relax in that stressful situation. So next time that we're triggered, someone cuts us off in traffic, it's not a cold plunge. Someone says something we don't like, it's not a cold plunge, but we remember when we get stressed out, instead of going into that fight or flight, we go, oh wait, there's stress? Let me switch.
Yeah.
And let me bring myself back down and regulate my nervous system. Yeah. And it's a really powerful tool that we can access. I mean, you can breathe deeply into the belly in a stressful social situation without anybody ever knowing about it.
I like that.
So this is important. And, you know, there's a lot of experiences that we're going to have. Stress is brought on for people, different reasons, but essentially the physiology works the same. So, you know, for regular human beings or for first responders.
Yeah.
But I find it's extremely, like with Guardian Revival, it's great because, you know, Guardian Revival was founded by a Navy SEAL named Alex Othmer. And Alex had dealt with his own mental health struggles, and he recognized that there really wasn't a need to kind of teach and guide and provide the support and community to help the veterans and first responders. So he created this out of this exact need that we're discussing right now. But it doesn't just apply to Guardians, it also applies to helping the families, the spouses, the children. And the truth is, Michael, think about it. When you call 911, you're in your time of need.
Oh, yeah.
Your car's flipped over. Yeah. Your loved one is having a cardiac event. Your house is on fire. Who do you want to show up to help you? Someone who's frazzled and anxious and dysregulated and screaming and losing it? Or do you want someone who's calm, regulated, focused, and knows what to do? So ask yourself as a citizen, even if you're listening to this, how do you want your first responders to show up? And I really feel like if we understand how this job affects our first responders on a personal, emotional level, if we want to support them and help them, everybody in society benefits, because the quality of services we receive come from someone who is practicing a level of self-care that allows them to show up to their job and do it as well as possible. Amen. And that's important for us.
Amen. So. Well said. Well said. Well said. Well, brother, as we get to the close of this interview today, I want to express the gratitude for you sharing your stories and educating us in so many ways today. So well. You're so well spoken. If I didn't know your background, I would say that you're a college professor in philosophy, because that's the mindset that you project, and it's what we needed to hear today. In the last couple of minutes here, can you talk to me and give some advice about people who are stuck in a situation today, maybe not in darkness, but are starting their road to recovery? What advice would you give to them that would get them pushed further along that recovery line?
It's a great question. You're not alone. If you're out there and you're stuck, if it's dark, if you're afraid, if you're full of emotions that you don't understand and you don't know what to do with them, if you've lost yourself, if you've let yourself go, if you feel like no one cares, if you're ashamed and full of guilt because you feel like you're broken and there's something wrong with you, you're not. And you're not alone. That there's a lot of us, myself included, that have been in very dark places and almost did not make it out alive. And all this is going to be the tough part to hear. Although what you're experiencing right now is not your fault, unfortunately, it's your responsibility to fix it. And although you're not alone, and I will help you, Michael will help you, the team at GuardianRevival.org will help you, we can't do it for you. It's this idea of like leading the horse to water type of thing. You have to, the first step of this journey comes from you wanting to get better. And as they say, the journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step. You have to want to make that step. Because that actually, in the subconscious, is the seed that will grow and flower into health and a new life. That seed being, I still want to live. I still have some hope. Even if it's a glimmer, even if it's a tiny seed of hope that you want to get better. That really drives the subconscious to say, what can I do? What can I do to take that one step? Like you said before, maybe it's that 15-minute walk in the sun.
Yep.
Maybe it's reaching out and saying, I need help. But that plants the seed that literally will drive you forward. And then if you ask for help and you reach out, there are so many actionable tools that can be provided, support. There in so many ways, that intention for you to want to get better is the very thing that starts that process within you to say, yes, I want to make a better food choice. I want to make a better choice about how I live my life. I want to make a better relationship with how I speak to myself, about how I feel about myself, about how my body looks, about how my health is. And so I would just encourage you to recognize you're not alone. You can reach out and ask for help, which takes bravery, and we can guide and support you to encourage you on your healing journey. And I just encourage you to ask for help and reach out. And if people wanted to learn more, they could go to GuardianRevival.org and they can inquire about the services that are available to all of our guardians. And it's not always the easiest journey to ask for help, but it is a step in the right direction. And I just encourage you to reach out and ask for help. And there's lots of people out there that care about your suffering and want to help you through it.
Yeah, perfect. Ed, I'm so glad that you're still with us today. I'm glad that you made the steps to reach out for help. Most of us cannot help ourselves through the hardest parts. We need help from external sources, and the best help that I've found is within our own community of first responders and veterans. And so thanks for the work that you do and continue to do, and I look forward to more collaboration in the future, Ed.
Thanks for having me on today, Michael.
Yeah, brother.